Piers Morgan had Ben Shapiro on his show, and this is the moment that stood out to me the most. This is probably one of the only areas of disagreement that Piers brought up, and this is something. Ben really says something bold here. Let's listen, and then we'll break it down.
Important. Here's one part of all this debate which I disagree with you about. So you don't agree with gay marriage or with gay parenting. I don't want to misquote you, but I think that's your position. Now, I would say that reading the rest of your views on stuff, you're very about fairness and equality for all, right?
No, he's not. Where did you get that from? Yeah, Ben Shapiro, that's a cornerstone of his commentary, is he's all crusading for fairness and equality. I don't know where he gets that from.
How does that fit in there? Why shouldn't two men who are gay actually be able to bring a child up? Why shouldn't they if they want to get married? How is it equal or fair for them to be excluded?
So we can take those issues one by one. So marriage is a societal institution. The question is which relationships society chooses to sanctify. So I'm not in favor of, for example, laws that criminalize homosexual activity or two men living together or two men making a lifelong commitment to one another in whatever context they wish to do that. What I'm objecting to is the idea that marriage as a term is equally applicable to relationships that are designed to produce the future generation and then raise them, as opposed to two people who love each other. The fundamental redefinition of marriage.
That's such a bad point, because there are plenty of people who are married who never have kids. Should they not be allowed to say that they're married? Should we change the term for them because they're not procreating? There are plenty of senior citizens, they're on maybe their first marriage, but it could be their second or third marriage, and they're past their childbearing years. Should the government say, you're not allowed to call this marriage? This isn't marriage because you're not going to procreate. You're not creating future generations, so it doesn't count. It's a different category. He's just arbitrarily making up criteria to exclude the people that he doesn't want included. Now, why? Why is he doing that? Honestly, I think the answer is he's religious. That's it. He's a religious person. His religion says, no, gay marriage is bad. It's not allowed. And so he's working backwards from that conclusion. So it really stems from his goofy religious beliefs. He's willing to impact other people's lives substantively. He's willing to fundamentally declare people as second-class citizens because he has a goofy religious idea that he would like to force onto society.
Marriage actually happened before same-sex marriage, within heterosexual marriage. Away from the purpose of heterosexual marriage is man, woman, child, to two people who love each other. Once you do that, then that obviously is going to encompass things like two men or two women, but it has no limiting principle because then it could be any group of people who love each other. And I don't think that the government has a fundamental role in propagating relationships other than ones that have externalities that benefit society. And the chief externality that benefits society from marriage is having children, and children raised largely with their biological parents. As far as gay parenting, what I'd say...
By the way, that's a lot of words to say I disagree with 70% of the country. I disagree with basic fairness and equality. That's a lot of words when he could just say that.
That is that there are sort of hierarchies of options, meaning that the ideal is man, woman, child. And then, if you can't fulfill that ideal, then there's obviously gradations. I'd rather that two gay men are raising a child than have that child be in an orphanage, for example. So it's not as...
But they just can't say they're married. By the way, he's taking this argument from Jordan Peterson. This is an argument that Jordan Peterson made to Dave Rubin's face. Dave Rubin, who is gay married, and they have, I believe, 2 kids now. Jordan Peterson makes the argument like, well, I guess maybe I'll allow it, but you have to admit this is not ideal. You have to admit that you are not the, quintessential platonic ideal of marriage, that you are kind of defective because it's 2 men. Now, I'll allow it because I'd rather have 2 men raise the kid than have the kid with no parents at all, but just acknowledge that this isn't perfect. This isn't good. This isn't just. This is a sad attempt to reach the ideal, which you're falling short of. I don't know if Peterson goes as far as to say we should have a different term for it. It shouldn't be called marriage, but that is explicitly what Ben Shapiro believes, that there should be no gay marriage. I guess he would now be in favor of what you would call civil unions, which is like you give all the rights of marriage, but you just don't call it marriage. But that's not even perfectly clear. In fact, he may say something about that in just a second here.
So the alternatives are always, the ones that I would want.
But shouldn't they be allowed to have the same just rights in law to what straight couples would have?
Well, I mean, it's more benefits than rights, right? If you're talking about a right, what you're talking about is a government non-intervention with particular activity. Now, when it comes to children, we obviously do things to protect children or provide them with...
I've seen gay parents who are fantastic parents. I've seen gay parents who I think are not fantastic parents.
Sure.
I've seen a lot of straight parents who are awful, and I've seen some great straight parents. I don't really see any particular distinction about what combination you have as your parents.
So I do. And the reason I do is because, again, I think there is a fundamental distinction between woman and man. And what that means is that mothers and fathers are both necessary. And so the idea that two men can simply supplant a man and a woman on a generic average level, I don't think is true.
Supplanting what they do.
But that's nonsense, because there are plenty of people who, if it's like two gay women and they're married, oftentimes one person plays a little bit more of the quote-unquote masculine role and one plays more of the female role, and things work out. But even in a situation where that's not there, where there's not the traditionally masculine role and traditionally feminine role, it usually still works out as long as you have two people there to love the child and raise the child and teach the child. Then it usually works out better than not having that or having them in an orphanage or whatever. These are just very bad arguments. And again, I think it stems from he's very religious. He's working backwards from that conclusion that gay marriage is wrong.
This is what they are. I mean, you don't think that gay people become gay, presumably, right?
Well, I mean, I think that the notion that everyone who is gay was always gay from the time that they were born, I don't think that the data back that, per se, because we are seeing rising levels, for example, across society of people identifying in a particular way. So there is some...
Yeah, but that could just be them coming out of the closet, that they felt that way but never expressed it because they didn't feel like they would be accepted by their family or society or whatever. These are just bad arguments.
Fluidity to sexual behavior and sexual activity. There's less fluidity probably to sexual orientation.
You assume that the majority...
Yeah, I'm more on the born this way side than anything else. And that goes for everything. If you're straight, if you're gay, if you're trans, I do think it's more likely that it's like hardwiring, that you're like born that way. Now, I could be wrong, but the only way in which I could conceive of me being wrong is that maybe sexual orientation or sexual or identity, gender identity, maybe that forms in your youth at an impressionable period. So you weren't born that way, but you kind of become that way very quickly. And then once you have it formed at a very young age, then it's unchangeable. So in other words, functionally, it's like the same thing. Whether or not you were born that way is kind of irrelevant. The question is it changeable? Is it malleable? Is it amorphous? And on that one, I have a hard no conclusion. It's not. You are what you are, kind of. So it almost doesn't matter whether or not you were born that way. But I do kind of lean in that direction. But if it's not that, it's you are that way and it's not changeable, and it developed in, a impressionable early childhood time.
Yeah, but sure.
The majority of gay people, male and female, are born gay, right? If you take that as a basic premise, the majority are, which I absolutely believe. I'm just not sure how it's fair or equitable to deny them the same rights to their relationship status or to parenting that you would give to straight people.
So again, I really don't think that has anything to do with being born or not born in a particular way. I think even if they were not born in a particular way, that the government should not criminalize private activity. What I do think is that if we are talking about the benefits that a government is giving in order to propagate childbearing and rearing within the context of the biological parents, which is, again, what marriage originally was supposed to be, which is why marriage was government-sponsored.
What would you do if one of your kids, they're all very young, so you have no idea, but if one of your kids turned out to be gay and wanted to get married, would you be tough enough to say, you can't do that?
I mean, I would oppose that from... So religion... So, again, marriage exists in a few different...
Yeah,
religion... So marriage exists in a couple of different iterations. One is religious marriage, which is kind of what I care about. And then there is governmental sanctioned marriage, which is a public policy question.
Right.
When it comes to religious marriage, no, I'm not in favor of my religion sanctifying same-sex couples.
If his kid was gay and his kid came to him and said, "Dad, I'm gay. Do I have your blessing to marry the person I love?" He would say, "No, you don't." Man, religion really makes people rationalize and justify some hideous, hideous behavior, doesn't it? I can't imagine, your own flesh and blood person that you've raised from when they were a baby, something as arbitrary as like their sexual, orientation, their identity, something as arbitrary as that, for you to draw a hard line on that. Like, no, I don't think you should try to be happy with a person that you love and get it, approved by the state. I find that astonishing, man. So, in other words, his like religious indoctrination overrides his love of family. That's so extremist. It's so extreme. Because there are plenty of examples of people who proclaim to be like super religious and have their code and believe in it, but then as soon as somebody in their family is like, "Hey, I'm gay," or I'm trans, or I'm a little different, it's like, I can't help but love you. What am I gonna do? I respect that so much more. I would rather you be a hypocrite for your own incorrect code than act like this and stick by it. Say, no, this shouldn't be allowed. Just dark, man. Just dark. Holy cow.
Specifically because, again, my religion propagates the idea that man, woman, and child is the model for families.
Your religion is wrong. I don't know how else to say this kindly. There's over 4,000 religions in the world. Is Ben Shapiro really dumb enough to believe I happen to stumble upon the right one, I am in the right club or group or clique or cult? Does he sincerely believe, like, no, we got it right. We figured it out. So, that's why I have these hardcore beliefs that I don't deviate from, that I'm very rigid about. I know he's smart enough to not believe that. So for him to admit that, Jesus, yeah, no, I'd tell my kid no. Ooh, it reminds me of the Dave Rubin moment. Remember the very famous moment where Dave Rubin is like, hey, if we had like a party because we got married, you're invited, are you coming? And he's like, no. Jesus Christ, dude. Jesus Christ. So, I think the main takeaway from this segment is very simple. He ain't no moderate, especially nowadays with the whole Steven Crowder versus Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro fiasco. There's, the common understanding in the context of that fight is Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro represent the more moderate wing of right-wing political commentary. And in that particular context, I understand it. But in terms of his overall politics and his overall beliefs, he ain't nowhere near moderate, man. No, this is a very, very hard right guy. He is. And, some wild stuff here. Some wild stuff. I can't imagine betraying your child like that. It's wild. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.